Today we have an exclusive, a conversation that many would be looking forward to hear, and it's one that's got to do with definitely Nigeria. Now, we will be talking to someone who has been within the arms of power and one who has actually been there and has done that. Joining me in this conversation is a former Minister of Youth and Sports and currently a special advisor to the #1 citizen, President Bola Tinubu, talking about on communications. I do have with me here, we have Mr. Dr. Sunday Dari. I need to add the doctor there so we can clarify.
Good morning, Joe.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us today.
So many things to talk about in a very short time, but we'll try as much as possible to ensure that we manage our time well. First of all, there has been conversations around a whole lot, but I'm going to take them one after the other. I'm going to start off first with the communication from the presidency. Pretty much Nigerians are thinking or think at a certain point that aren't we getting too many information from too many special advisors to the president? Because it's almost like at a certain point, every SA wants to talk on a certain issue.
Well, I think that you have a country that is vast in terms of population. You have a citizenry that is very expectant of the performance of government. You have a citizenry that needs to be informed in a comprehensive way. You have a government that is also quite busy on several fronts. There's a lot happening. The last time I checked, I read of about 35 different initiatives in terms of policies and projects and initiatives that are identifiable by this government. And there's a need for effective communication. We also live in a world where you have a multiplicity of channels of information. You talk about the whole gamut of the social media. You talk about the legacy media, the newspapers. You talk about the networks that we have. But also on top of that, you have the presidency and its communication team. And our work beyond just saying what the president says is also making sure we cover every single government policy, whether it's been implemented by the Agri Ministry or by the Defense Ministry. So when this information comes out, we are at work trying to put out the information. These are not conflicting information. It's like piloting the information. The point I make often is this. People go to different channels and platforms to get their information. So if you decide that you've issued a press statement and you assume every Nigerian has heard about it, that's not an effective communication. So you have a spread out. Some put it on social media. Social media also determine, is it going to be Twitter or X? Is it going to be Facebook? Is it going to be Instagram? Some also put it on radio. Is it going to be in Hausa radio, Yoruba radio? So it's an attempt to make sure that enough information. A few times also, we try to break it down. Some of us break it down into capsules. Pick out the unique information. How do you apply yourself? Oh, Nelfon is fantastic. They're spending 86 billion on Nelfon. Good. Somebody needs to take it further to say, you know you can benefit from Nelfon. If you have a son that is 18-year-old, if you have somebody that is in school, this is a process, this is a process. And so that's what you see. Cascading information down is critical. You have to break it into several. So it's an effort to make sure that information gets to our people in a comprehensive manner, but also in a capsulized manner that is easily digestible.
But this has led many to say that it's like we're having a duplication of duty. Aside that, it's also leading to questions around having too many people in the cabinet or too many people who's working with Mr. President, because sometimes we do hear, of course, that you have an SA who has an SA, who has an assistant, who has an assistant. And in line with what Nigerians are going through, then they're being told, you have to tighten their belt.
The president's appointments are clear and statutory. And we must draw a line. Even as journalists, we know there's authority. There's authority that derives from the office of the president, that derives from the Constitution. For instance, special advisors. The power of the president to pick special advisors is clear, is so designated. Also ministers. So just as you can have somebody just decide. So when you have these secondary appointments that are not official, it's done by individuals who if you appoint a PA for yourself now, it's not made by the management of New Central, and you cannot, because they're not drawing salaries, but you have a PA for your own convenience. So what we're saying is a misnomer, and I think that will be soon corrected, is a misnomer that an SA or a DG will appoint an SSA, then the SSA rolls out SSAs, and it's a misnomer, and I know that has been addressed already.
Let's quickly go into the aspect of insecurity. We did see what many have termed to be unconstitutional, what took place in Rivers State for 6 months, where a sitting and elected governor was removed and, of course, replaced by a sole administrator who took over the role of a governor.
Well, you know, at the tail end, we're at the tail end, just a couple of 72 more hours. And I thought the debate about the rightness or wrongness of that decision had been settled. But since you have brought it up, I will say 3 things. First, in 6 months, we have seen that the reason for that state of emergency have been justified. We've seen stability, we've seen reconciliations, we've seen local government elections. These were things that were totally absent. There was political instability, there was confrontation, the system was being heated up. It was impossible to hold local government elections and all of that. So it has achieved its purpose, and that's important too. Section 35 is very clear. And the law, sometimes they say the law is an ass, you get various interpretations. But the president is well informed and advised. It took legal whatever. What does the law say? Where are my powers? Can I use those powers? You know, when it comes to statecraft, there are certain decisions a leader must take. When you perceive that there's an existential threat, a leader has the choice to either do nothing or do something. And that do something is also divided into 2. You can do something according to the letter of the Constitution, or do something that is extraordinary beyond, what the law says. In statecraft, you have that power. But you see a president that has confined himself to the limits of the Constitution. We've seen the result of it. The stability that's there now, the development of Rivers State will go on once that takes place and the governor returns. And the purpose of that state of emergency has been fulfilled.
I'm sure if we go into that, we would continue pulling that rope. Yeah, possibly we wouldn't get to the end because of time.
There are condition precedents. It's not the first time.
Yeah,
it's not the
also
first president to make that invitation.
But there are also clarity or statements that the governor has been arm-twisted to actually accede to a few.
So let me say, you know how many versions of the stories we've had about Rivers State crisis.
So which one is true?
About Fubara. I'm just saying there's a tendency to just have multiple story angles and all of that. But I think if we keep our eye on the ball, it's about the contest for power between the former governor and the current governor. It's about disagreements over certain issues. And those disagreements led to a dislocation of the political space. And when it comes to development, even the voters and the citizenry, once the political space is heated up, those that are within the power lose, but the people themselves lose. For instance, resources from the federal government going to Rivers State are suspended for 2 months. The arms of government were not working properly. So if you keep your eye on that, the efforts in place, working in tandem with making sure that that political space is stabilized, and Rivers State, the House of Assembly can come back, the governor can come back, the local governments are functioning, are we going to achieve that? So in this instance, you have a president who decided, look, I'll keep my eye on the ball, do what is important for Rivers State. The stories will keep flying around. You can never have one story. But you also have Governor Fubara who is coming back. For him to have risen to be governor, you must give him a bit of credit. You must also see that, look, in order to make things work, I have to serve the people. You make compromises. Politics is about understanding. It's about give and take. It's about compromises. It's not a winner-take-all. And that's what we've seen. The parties, antagonists, protagonists on both, I don't want to call names. Each of them have had to make a bit of sacrifice. And that's why we're at the point we are now. You've seen that even the sole administrator did a Thanksgiving. He also gave a report card saying the reason for which I've been able to fulfill. I think we should give this president credit, because the point, we had reached a tipping point. If he had waited 1 week, 2 weeks more, we'll have been saying something different about Rivers State. And you know Rivers is critical because it sits at part of the core of the oil producing region. You knew where we were before during the year that there were days. Now, there's a measure of stability. When they stabilized Rivers State with the state of emergency, what happened? We started moving from 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.4 to 1.6 million. So, a president that looks at the big picture and fixes that little ache constitutionally, not militarily.
Talking about the president fixing the ache, there seems to be a nagging toothache in the north and also in the center. We're still wondering if a state of emergency was to be called for River State, how come there hasn't been a state of emergency called on the insecurity that is bedeviling states like Plateau, Benue, and the likes?
No, okay.
How long must
let
we wait?
Let me relate this, because you know, in the first year, the president actually declared a state of emergency when it comes to food security. And that state of emergency on food security did not translate into shutting down farms and the rest. What it meant is a sense of urgency in marshalling the resources of state into agricultural production. That also means that, you know, activating all the levers, local government, state government, ministry, agencies, in that direction. Now, if you apply that to the security, there's clearly a state of emergency in the security sector. And how do you know that? First, the procurement of military hardware has been on the increase. That's one. Two, the Toscano jets that was ordered prior by the previous government that was delayed, this presidency has been able to get those Toscano jets. And even the chief of defense staff, about 2 months ago, said clearly, we have what we need. We have the air and the power that we need. Now, you look at the budget for defense, that's also critical. And then you look at what efforts have been made and the achievements. About 135 terrorist leaders have been neutralized. Captives that have been released are over 35,000. That is important. But I think the most significant that shows that the security effort being made by this government is really on point is the Ansaro brothers that were picked up, the two of them. They headed for the US and the UK government to recognize that and commend, because security is about intelligence. It's about the early warning system. It's not about what you do after the damage has been done. It's about what you do that is preemptive. So, and when it comes to the issue of security and security, there's no state that is ever free. There's no silver bullet. Just last week, Kirk
Absolutely.
was shot point blank in a country like America. If a top politician was shot in Nigeria today, God forbid, the entire country, this country is not safe. A month ago, 3 weeks ago, 16 young kids were shot down in school in America. The entire country did not say, oh, the government is doing nothing. What happens is, once you have this insecurity problem, how does the state respond? Does it respond in quick step? Arrests made? Certain things put in place? We need a responsive government. And from this administration, you have a responsive government.
But some of the killers have said to have, they're at large. They still haven't gotten some of them up until now, especially those who committed the atrocities in Plateau State and the likes. But
yeah, but I know for Benue, just last week they arraigned about 7 or so of them for Benue. Again, you see, you have to keep doing the work until you're able to find, you know how long it took United States of America to get Osama bin Laden?
Very long time.
But they stayed on it. That's the work of intelligence. The work of intelligence is tedious. You also have to be deliberate so that as you're lining up the facts, you don't torpedo some of the facts. Because if you get too much in a hurry, the lead you're following, once it dries up, you will lose the person you're looking for. And I think that from top to bottom, from Malam Noor Ribadu, the National Security Advisor, to our service chiefs, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Because this, again, is a vast country. You know, I'm a boundary, you know, when you talk about border security, that's my area of expertise. We have 1,607 unpoliced, whatever, between Nigeria and Niger. You stretch that to Benin Republic. You stretch that to Cameroon. Totally unpoliced. How do you deal with that? The Chief of Defense was saying, let's build a wall. Why is Trump building a wall right now on the Mexican-U.S. border? Because of insecurity, the problems are facing.
So is Nigeria planning to build a wall?
Yeah. No, well, there's been no policy on that. What we have better drone coverage of the place. We also see that government is moving to these ungoverned spaces and put some level of government authority. And what is that? Put a school there, put a hospital there. That's the way you take care of this insecurity, because those ungoverned spaces, they're the ones that these terrorists take over. But once there's a presence of government, some form of authority, they're exposed. So I know that effort is ongoing, and I think that's the best approach.
All right, finally, because we're running out of time, the ADC is here. 2027 is around the corner. Earlier on, we had seen campaigns flourishing, going up and down, even prior to you know, the approved
and INEC came out last week.
And INEC came out to say stop that.
Slow down.
But your party, the APC, was strong on pushing 2027. I mean, celebrating the president, billboards all across different areas, up until it took a longer time before we heard that the presidency said it should be stopped. Two things. What do you make of starting early campaigns, which ordinarily shouldn't have been? And then secondly, the ADC is around the corner. They have been recognized by the Independent National Electoral Commission.
So I'm glad that INEC came out and kind of warned against early campaigns. But you recall that 3 months ago, the presidency came out in a very clear statement, disassociating itself with the billboards sprouting up, especially around Abuja and other places, and making it clear, quoting the INEC rules and saying, listen, whoever is responsible, you should stop, because it's not time for campaigning, it's time for governance. This presidency is just about 2 years plus, and we have work to do. Let's stay focused. And I think that statement then by the presidency really drilled down. I'm glad that 3 months later, INEC is coming. I wish INEC had come out much earlier. But you see, when you have a political climate that is active, and for this country, you know what it is, you get things like this. You have citizen journalists. You also have citizen politicians. You know, citizens that, for them, politics is at A to Z. We don't control what the entire citizenry, what they do, but we know that INEC, an institution charged with that, must be upfront, reminding parties and also. But yeah, the ADC is here. You know, earlier, the ADC, when they came on, they said, oh, the president will tell INEC not to register them. And we came and said, look, the president is not about that. It's a Democrat par excellence. And what happened? INEC, when it did its due diligence, when they met all the conditions, ADC was registered. They have their own internal problems. You know, David Mag, Aregbesola, the court case flying, you know, even at night, another one was issued. That's the problem. The ADC is welcome because we believe in multi-party democracy. It's going to be a competition. You show me what you've done. And that's it. You know, this administration cannot and will not be distracted with the ADC noise. The president has a mandate to govern this country, to make life better, to renew the hope of Nigerians. The ADC is busy with forming the party and making all the noise. That's fine, they can do it, but the president will not be distracted.
Thank you so much for your time, Honorable Sonidari, for speaking with us. We look forward to have you again. Hopefully we can touch base with some very critical conversations, especially surrounding 2027 and what truly affects every single Nigerian. Stay with us. You're still watching News Central.